Ding. Hello, everyone. This is Linda Mamavi coming to you live. And in today's video, I have my very good friend here, a friend that I actually connected with on Facebook. So I just want to remind you, audience, that you never know who you're going to come across in Facebook groups. So that's why Facebook groups are actually very, very, very good to be in. So I just want to say welcome to Karen Kinsinger. Karen, how do you pronounce your name? Your last name? Your last name?
It's Kinsinger.
Okay, Kinsinger. I was about to say it very incorrectly. So, Karen, welcome, and I'm so excited to have you in this video because you are an expert in an area that I know for most of us who live in Northern America, probably people like myself stress you around this season because it's the tax season. For the rest of the season, we don't talk to you. And then when it's tax season, we're like, Karen, help me. So if you're in Northern America, definitely you want to be listening because Karen is an expert in bookkeeping, accounting, taxes, you name it. Okay, so Karen, we're going to go right into our chat. Can you just share with us a little bit about yourself and how you started in this business?
Yeah, sure. So I originally started out as more of an administrative assistant.
Mm-hmm.
And in that position, I had to learn QuickBooks. Brand new to QuickBooks, didn't know the foggiest thing about QuickBooks.
Yes.
So I learned QuickBooks, discovered that I actually enjoyed that part of it more than some of the other tasks that I was given in that job.
Yes.
So from that job, I went to do full charge bookkeeping for my cousin's bakery.
Mm-hmm.
And I was there for a few years.
Wow.
And then from there, I decided to quit that job and open my own practice doing bookkeeping. So that was a year and a half, almost 2 years ago now.
Wow, fantastic. So prior to that, did you have knowledge of, accounting, bookkeeping? Had you been to an official school in that area at all?
Not at all. Most everything was self-taught. Over the years, I have completed some QuickBooks certification courses.
Mm-hmm.
And also, when I decided to start my own business, I enrolled in Bookkeeper Business Launch, which I enrolled more for the marketing side of things, but
Sure.
It was incredibly helpful in brushing up on some things that I wasn't as familiar with in bookkeeping and just kind of solidifying that knowledge.
Wow, that's exciting, Karen, because then you are still a very good example of someone who's taken, as we call it, in this day and age, passion to profits, where you are passionate about, bookkeeping and numbers and so forth, and you just decided that, hey, I can actually do this for people. I can actually offer it as a service to people. Well, that is quite exciting. So I have some questions for you here. And ladies and gentlemen, actually, mostly women in our Ditch the Overwhelm group, but we're actually filming this on our webpage too, webpage 24, and there are a lot of entrepreneurs. So what I had Karen do is I actually also asked her if she could write out specific questions that she already knows some of us have. So the questions that I'll be asking Karen are not just off the top of my head. These are actually specific questions that she probably gets in the business almost on a daily basis. And especially, like I said, if you live in Northern America, around this time, people are asking certain questions. So let's get into question number one. It says here, what are the first steps you recommend a business owner takes? What are the first steps you recommend a business owner takes? Let me see. I think we've lost Karen for just a few seconds. There she is. Yay.
It keeps blipping in and out.
Don't worry, it's all technology. It's all good. You just keep going. So the question, Karen, was, what are the first steps that you recommend a business owner takes? What are some of those few steps that you recommend as, in your field?
Sure. So the absolute very first thing that I recommend anybody does is to choose your business structure, whether it is a sole proprietorship or a single member LLC, whatever that structure is. And sole proprietorship and single member LLC are kind of the most common ones, especially when you're just starting out. That's absolutely the first step.
Okay.
Second is separate your personal and your business finances.
Yes.
Do that by getting a separate checking account, a separate business credit card or debit card or something like that. You can also, and then definitely also track your income and expenses.
Okay. So what if someone says, well, I cannot afford to have even two bank accounts where I have a, my personal account, banking account, and my business account. I'm not yet an LLC. I don't have any, any of that fancy business set up yet. Besides, what else, how else can they still keep that personal and business separate in terms of the finances?
Generally, there is, at least in the area that I'm in, like it doesn't cost anything to have a business checking account.
Sure.
So if at all possible, get that business checking account, or even if it's some kind of separate checking account. Maybe it's, I think sometimes there's a little bit of a difference between an actual personal checking account and an actual business checking account. Even if it's a separate personal checking account, get a separate bank account if you at all can.
Got you.
But I'm not really sure how to tell you to keep it separate if you have to use the same bank account. I mean, it can be done. It just creates a lot of confusion and extra steps in separating everything out.
Okay. I absolutely hear what you're saying, and I'm glad that you're emphasizing that as far as it is possible, keep them separate, because as far as I know, I can only speak from where I live, Northern America. Most banks will allow you to have like a free savings account or a checking account where you don't have to keep even a minimum or a maximum amount of money. So, and from what I'm hearing you saying, you can save yourself a whole lot of headache if you just start off with those basics. Because remember, audience, Karen is actually starting us off with the basics. And this is part of the basics, because it's like you're building a financial foundation for your business. And so if you get the foundation wrong as you build up, we all know that's going to be disastrous. Okay, so I'm glad you mentioned that. Now, how does bookkeeping help a business, Karen?
Bookkeeping helps a business by giving you the ability to track your profitability, maintain cash flow, improve your financial management, prepare for taxes, and it creates easier reporting. And that is kind of a loaded question right there. But I just lost my train of thought.
No. Now that you mentioned it, it's a loaded question. Yes.
Yeah, so bookkeeping, number one, in North America, it is a requirement, and I'm going to make an educated guess that it's probably a requirement in other countries as well.
Yes.
I can't speak for that, but I'm going to make a guess that it is. But yeah, bookkeeping gives you a good picture of where you're at, where your business is at financially.
Absolutely.
The use of financial reports can help you see any areas for improvement. It can, it helps. You can track your profitability, and you can see what your earnings are over time and plan for future growth. And it also lets you maintain cash flow, which is good for noticing where all your money is going, and maybe spotting any areas that that need to be kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of toned down a little bit. Like if you're overspending in a certain area, or something like that. Does that make sense?
It makes absolute sense. I mean, everything you were saying, because from, I'm tracking what you're saying because I can identify with a lot of things that you're saying. That's why I was emphasizing about when you started us off with telling us about the basics, because the way I see it, I'm more of a visionary, visual person. So it's like you're building you're just it's building blocks. And if you get it wrong in the beginning, it's going to be disastrous. That's where we end up with businesses going out of business because they didn't have enough cash flow. You mentioned something interesting too, that's a very good point, that it allows you to see where your cash flow is going. So let's say, for example, myself, maybe let's say if you were to analyze my finances, you'd say, Linda, well, maybe why don't you host your website on a cheaper hosting plan, which is still very good. Maybe let's say I'm paying $100 for a hosting plan when I can get a hosting plan that's $25 and I'm still getting the same, very similar package. So because how many times do financial advisors brought into a big corporate and then find out that there was so much wastage going on and so forth? So what you're saying definitely is making a whole lot of sense. So I just want our audience to really understand that bookkeeping is not for just big accounts. It's for you and I. Because when I was growing up, I just used to think, well, bookkeeping is for the baker and, the butcher down the road, but never for us, even as a family. Only to grow up realizing, yeah, that's why, I was suffering from poor management in terms of my own life, because nobody had taught me that even in a family, you still need bookkeeping. Somebody has to be a bookkeeper.
Right.
Somebody has to be a bookkeeper. So what kind of work does a bookkeeper do? We kind of now have gotten a slight picture of what you do, but what kind of work does a bookkeeper do?
So a bookkeeper does things like does the collection and organization of all your financial documents.
Mm-hmm.
It's their job to gather, organize, and file every single bit of data that's related to your finances. Mm-hmm. This includes things like invoicing clients or organizing and categorizing receipts, which is a huge topic.
Yes.
And also balancing any bank, credit card accounts, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. 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 Okay. Because let's face it, most of us will say, well, I don't have time, and no, I didn't keep this receipt. Like, for example, right now, I'm still looking for a receipt for a computer that I purchased last year, and realizing, well, it was a lot of money that I paid, and I really need that receipt, to show up. So definitely what you're saying is making sense, because we all know when it comes to keeping of receipts, most of us, I know when I started out, I didn't have even a system. So let me just pause on that question. Do you have any suggestions on, for example, how to just keep receipts? And maybe you could share with us personally what you tell maybe people in just a casual conversation when they find out you are into bookkeeping.
Yeah, sure. Actually, what I personally do is, for our personal books,
yes,
when I'm out shopping, obviously the receipts go in my purse. Mm-hmm. When I come home, or let's be honest, when I clean out my purse, I have a spot near the doorway where I keep my purse that all the loose change goes in, all the receipts go in, and then from there, when I can't stand the way it looks there anymore, or I sit down to enter receipts,
yes,
I take all those receipts, I bring them over to my desk. I have a folder right next to my desk. That's where they go. I know that they're right there when I need to go sit down and enter receipts. So I recommend finding a spot that makes the most sense for you to keep those receipts. If you are pretty well completely online and you do a lot of online purchases,
yes,
my email inbox has all kinds of different folders. I have a different folder specifically for PayPal. I have a folder for Amazon. Just finding micro ways to organize those receipts.
Okay.
And having a dedicated folder for receipts.
Okay, that's a very good point because what I've done too, I went to Dollar Tree and I got myself like a small plastic bucket. So every time we go shopping, like you mentioned, the receipt is in your purse. So immediately when I get to the car, I just take it out and I drop it into that plastic bucket. And then later on, bring the plastic bucket into the house and just straighten out all the receipts. But I'm also glad you mentioned, for those who are more like, you're tech savvy, they like everything digital. You've got folders, and that's what I've done. PayPal, Amazon, or just different places that we shop from. Because most of us, we kind of live a systemized life where we either shop, using PayPal from Amazon, eBay, three places, but we're not like everywhere. Of course, there might be people like that. So it's much easier to track. So let's go on to the next question. We have quite a number of questions here. And you've already, I think, mentioned the next question. You've talked about it a little bit. How do you categorize expenses? Now, this is a question I hear a lot of times. How do you categorize expenses?
So the biggest thing is within your accounting software, there's something called chart of accounts. Mm-hmm. And this is basically all your expense accounts, actually every single account that you have in your accounting software. Okay. That's your bank accounts, your credit card accounts, any loans that you have, assets that you have, which are assets are typically something that is of high value, like a vehicle would be an asset. Okay. Things even like your computer are an asset, but mm-hmm. because they are a less expensive purchase, yes, they don't usually depreciate something like a laptop, but you mm-hmm. can still have it as an asset. Sure. But your chart of accounts has every single account that you use in your bookkeeping, and mm-hmm. so your expenses are divided into different accounts. Okay. And the biggest thing that I recommend doing is to make sure that those expense accounts are clearly labeled. Mm. And, so that there's no question what gets put in there. Okay. For instance, let me find one here real quick. Sure. So if you have an account labeled advertising, mm-hmm. what's going to go in there? Advertising. Okay. Things like Facebook ads or Craigslist ads or wherever you advertise. Yes. Or maybe you take out an ad in the local paper. Mm-hmm. Anything to do with advertising would go under that. Yes. And then, office expenses, office supplies, those are pretty, to me, they're self-explanatory. Yes. Office, I will tell you the difference between like office expenses versus supplies. Expenses would be things like your computers, your mm-hmm. Any software, fax machine, printer, that kind of thing. Office supplies would be more tangible consumables, like pens, paper, staplers, uh-huh. printer, ink, and that kind of thing. Yes. But yeah, so I recommend having expense categories that are pretty clear. Like if you have an expense category that's labeled purchases, that doesn't tell you anything about what's under there, you know? Under there, yes. So, yeah, so that's why I like to have them be more specific so that you can easily know where to put something. Some things are still a little bit confusing. But as a general rule, if you have them very specific, mm-hmm. it's a lot easier to know where to put them. The second thing is to not over-categorize. This often happens. Yes. happens. Yeah. That one thing that you're not quite sure where to put. Yes. So you create another category for it, and you may already have something similar to that. Okay. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? It makes sense because number one, you talked about people who end up, over categorizing, and then there's the opposite who just write purchase. And
what came to my mind as you were talking was when I was growing up, I remember my mother had like a seamstress business where she employed like a few seamstresses. And looking back, she, I would say she had the category where it'd be like just purchases. And what ended up happening is some of the workers ended up stealing from her because when it came to, well, what happened to this piece of material, it was like, well, we did this with it. But if they had been like a more specific way of tracking, like to say, for example, we used $20 to purchase black material for the dresses or something, I think she would have realized it sooner than later that two of the workers were actually stealing from her. So this makes sense for people also who have VAs to be even more to be very specific when, like you talked about, categorizing. So, but also not over categorizing. So it's very helpful because eventually all of us, we want to scale our business and then have someone assist us, so a virtual assistant. So if you start off bad, then chances are a lot of things will go wrong and they'll go unnoticed because
Yes.
of the way you've been charting things. So that actually makes sense. I think the question I had for you on that one is, what if someone is saying, well, Karen, you mentioned about accounting software or bookkeeping software, but I don't have any software. What would you say to that person? What would be your recommendation?
So a lot of accounting software is a paid software.
Mm-hmm.
There is one, if you're going to go the DIY route, which I don't recommend for multiple reasons.
Yes.
But if you plan to go the DIY route and you're just starting out, I would suggest something like Wave Apps. It is a completely free software. It's online.
Okay.
It has an incredibly simple user interface. It's very simple to use.
Okay.
Very straightforward. I took a look at it and I was floored because I'm used to QuickBooks.
Yes. Uh-huh.
But I was floored. Like I was like, it is incredibly simple. It's simple enough that I think anybody could use it.
Oh, fantastic. I will actually be putting that in the link. And Karen, I mean, we got talking, and one thing I forgot to ask you is, what if somebody wants to get hold of you and say, well, Karen, what you're talking about is just going all over my head. I'd rather have a one-on-one discussion with you. How can they reach you? I did put a link below in the description, but can you just tell us how someone can reach you and what do you actually offer initially when clients come to you?
Yeah. Bookkeeping is incredibly overwhelming. That
Mhm.
is why a lot of people hate it. There are a few nerds like me that enjoy it.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, I offer a free one-on-one phone call where we talk about your business goals, what you're looking
Yes.
toward in your business. And then if you are at the process where you are ready to hire a bookkeeper, I not only offer like a setup package, I also have monthly ongoing services that I do.
Hmm.
So the way they can get in contact with me is to, I think you put my link in the description or something.
Yes.
You can book a call through there, and we'll have a one-on-one discussion about what they need.
Okay. So is the one-on-one discussion just a free initial call where you can see if both of you are a good fit and how you can assist them?
Yes, it is. It's
Okay.
completely.
Okay, so if you're listening, if you're listening, audience, Karen is actually has a service where initially she's offering a one-on-one conversation with you, so that she can actually you can tell her how overwhelming. Because like she mentioned, that most of us do hate bookkeeping. I always hated bookkeeping when I was in school because I just thought, you know it's not a waste of time, but it's just a headache because there's a lot of tracking to be done. And if you are not one of those people who is into clutter, yes, it can get overwhelming. But if you just get on a system of being well organized, it makes life much easier. Like Karen has already mentioned to us, when it comes to the receipts, you have to track the receipts and so forth. So Karen, I'm just going to ask you two more questions. We have more questions, and definitely we're going to invite Karen to come back onto the show again, because we are still not done. Because one of the things we want Karen to do is to take us maybe like to the back end of a software, where whatever software she decides on, so that we can kind of take a look as she gives us an example, like, okay, these are what we call expenses, this is what you do, this is where you click. Because I know some of you might say, well, you know what, I probably will just get my own software, but I want someone to actually show me. And by the way, I can vouch for you, Karen does do that. She'll actually take you by the hand and show you how you can use QuickBooks. I know here in Northern America, many people are using QuickBooks because it's just one of those wonderful softwares. Some softwares are more popular than others. Well, Karen, the next question that we're going to ask is, what categories are tax deductible? What categories are tax deductible? Now, oh my goodness, that's a huge question.
It is that.
Yeah.
So the IRS defines business expenses as the cost of carrying on a trade or business. And they also go on to say that these expenses are usually deductible if
Yes.
the business intends to make a profit, which, hello, most of us are, unless you're a nonprofit.
Yes.
But typical deductions are things like advertising or continuing education. You can deduct credit card fees if you're part of a membership.
Okay.
You can deduct membership dues, or even your subscriptions. Like your QuickBooks subscription is actually deductible.
Oh, wow.
Or any other business-related subscriptions, and like your website subscription, if you pay on a monthly basis, or even an annual basis, that's deductible as well. Things like insurance, maintenance, and repairs on any equipment, that kind of thing. Your office expenses and supplies, postage and shipping, any printing, like if you print ads, well, that's technically not under printing, that would be advertising.
Okay.
If you print any flyers for something, that would be deductible. If you rent an office or retail space, that's deductible.
Deductible. Okay.
And then also things like business-related travel and any utilities like your cell phone or internet, that kind of thing.
Okay. I'm glad you're mentioning subscriptions, because I think that's one some people out there forget, even myself, because like you mentioned before, if you don't track some of these things, you might actually be leaving money on the table when you're actually then doing your taxes, because you are not taking into consideration, well, subscriptions, for your websites, that's all business related. I have quite a number of subscriptions, and sometimes I can't even, keep track, like, okay, what needs to go off this month, what have I subscribed to? And sometimes we subscribe to things just to test it out for, 3 or 4 months, and then we get off it because it's not working out, so all that, on a weekly, monthly basis. So our time is up. It's 3:29. What else would what's your last piece of advice to many of us, especially, entrepreneurs who are working from home, especially right now at this time of the year in Northern America? I know that the tax season here has been extended to probably June 15th. Is that true? Or, some people I know are still not sure if that's true.
Yeah. I'll be honest with you, I don't exactly know what the actual date is.
Okay.
Just simply because I don't deal with the taxes side of stuff.
Yes.
But yes, I do know it has been extended.
Okay.
I just couldn't remember the exact date.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, Karen, thank you so much. You've been very, very helpful, because you've actually taken out quite a few myths that I had in my head too, and you mentioned one thing that I know I'll take away from it is how you've emphasized, when it comes to just tracking, at least that's one for me, and considering the subscriptions, because a lot of times I forget about that. Like, oh, you know what? Last year I subscribed to this for about 6 months, but I'm no longer on it. And, having to go and find the receipts and so forth. So we definitely would like to have you back on again so that, like I said, so that you can walk us through, like, okay, if you have, because I suppose with bookkeeping software, I'm sure it's just very similar dashboards, like there's some things that are very specific to each dashboard, for the entrances and so forth. So that's what we want you to walk us through and show us, because a lot of times, when we bring people's like, I want to see the back end of it. How do I actually do it? But again, I just want to remind our audience, Karen is available for a free one-on-one consultation where you can actually show her and tell her what's been going on with your bookkeeping, and she can help you out with that. So please take full advantage with it. Just in case you cannot find the link, you can always DM me. But also, I just want to say, go to Karen's Facebook profile, like her page, because yeah, this is the kind of service that each one of us need in our lives. So once again, Karen, thank you so much for coming on to the program. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, Linda. I enjoyed it.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Have a good day. And everyone, we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.
Okay.